After the preface, Fleurs does not take its foot off the gas. You get one poem after the other that is looking to push buttons, to offend, to point out again and again the ugliness of life and the inherent beauty or potential for beauty in ugliness, and how all of these dualities are inseparable. They are linked. One of the most significant and obvious and honestly more reserved poems in this is is the poem Correspondences, which sets out this theory of the linkage of the spiritual world, the natural world, and the human world, and how we are all linked to one another, which is in essence a very romantic notion. The notion of the animal, the natural, the human, and the spiritual all one. That is a very romantic notion. He's borrowing an awful lot from a popular philosopher of the time, a guy named Swedenborg, Emanuel Swedenborg. Very interesting and a little offbeat character of early to mid-century Europe. The images start coming at you very lush. Nature is a temple whose living colonnades breathe forth a mystic speech in fitful sighs. Man wanders among symbols in the glades where all things watch him with familiar eyes. So you get a sense of, okay, first you have nature. Nature is a temple. Temple is like a religious thing. So maybe you're praying to nature is its own church. Breathe forth a mystic speech. So you're getting mysticism mixed with nature. Man wanders among symbols. Symbols are abstract, man is actual. But again, all of these combinations are interlocked. There is no separation. Where all things watch him with familiar eyes. So it's inseparable. The spirit world is in the human world, which is all in the natural world. It's sensory. It's not a particularly philosophical poem, but there's that philosophical underpinning. It is actually, he dwells more on his sensory qualities again. All sense and sounds and colors meet as one. Again, that tells you all of these different things, all of these different senses are all intertwined, and you cannot atomize them you cannot atomize them at all. Perfumes there are as sweet as the oboe's sound. Perfumes smell. Sweet is arguably a taste. Oboe is a sound. So you've got three different sensory experiences there, kind of synesthesia all over the place. Green as the prairies, fresh as a child's caress. So there's touch and sight, all of this getting mixed together. And there are others, rich, corrupt, profound. He never forgets the corruption. As idealistic as he will get, he never forgets there is a beast in the garden. The ecstasies of an infinite pervasiveness, like myrrh or musk or amber, that excite the ecstasies of sense, the soul's delight. The ecstasies of scent, that sense of exoticism. Perfume is an artificial scent, so there's that sense in a deeply artificial world as he finds himself in Paris, which is a very urban world. Perfume is probably everywhere. So he dwells on that quite a bit in all of his work. Smell in general is an issue. In mid-1800s Paris, bathing is probably a once-a-week luxury, except among the very wealthy classes, among whom he did not really mingle. So you get an awful lot of references to perfume, which is artificial and is looking to cover up yet another smell underneath. So it's these complicated mixtures of the sweet and the sour, always together. Speaking of which, her hair. Well, this is a deep dive into a kind of sensory overload that is, well, there are a couple of ways to interpret hair. And it depends on, you can bring some outside information into this. You can bring some you can bring some biographical information into this, and some notable critics have. And one of the biographical instances is that the woman with whom he had his longest relationship, he lived with her for years, was an actress who was a black woman. And there is a certain reference to the hair that certain critics pick up as saying, well, now this stamps it as a kind of this is a salute to the black woman's body, presumably, perhaps, the afro. The fleece that down the neck waves to the nape. The hair is not straight. The hair is fleece. It is very curly. Oh curls, oh perfume, nonchalant and rare, oh ecstasy, to fill this alcove shape with memories that in these tresses sleep. I would shake them like pennons in the air, like flags. There are other references to a kind of exoticism in there that some critics will tell you, well, this is a sign that, you know, he is celebrating black womanhood. Languorous Asia, burning Africa, and a far world defunct, almost absent within your aromatic forest stay, as other souls on music drift away, mine, oh my love, still floats upon your scent. There's a actuality. The body has a scent. So there is a physicality that he is dwelling on here that is really quite alluring, really quite decadent. Well, that's a different trajectory that this work is going to. But the sense of this is very possibly a poem specifically to a black woman's hair, black woman's body. You get a lot of different itemizations of body parts here. He's always very physical. He never leaves that behind. And the female body here is really just a collection of different parts. So he is dwelling. There is an objectification here that can be rather awkward at times. He's not really spending any time at all talking about, you know, what a nice person she is or anything like that. And she must have had the patience of a saint if this is the same woman and she spent all those years with him and he was, you know, he had some issues. But there is a dehumanization, I think it's fair to say, in this, in that there is so much focus on specific physical attributes more than on the person behind it. So there is that physical thing. Another question of the hair, and this, you know, it kind of needs to be said, is that it's not necessarily hair on the head. The references, the continuous references to the scent, the sense of the curls, again, curly hair. It seems to be quite musky. There is an almost liquid sense to it as well. I'll plunge my hand, enamored of its pleasure, in this black ocean where the other hides, black again, possibly. My subtle spirit will then know a measure of fertile idleness and fragrant leisure, lulled by the infinite rhythm of its tides. Well, fertile, there's a little hint. Fragrant, and also plunging your hand. Plunging, you plunge into something that is wet. you can follow that where you like. A long time, always, my hand in your hair will sow the stars of sapphire, pearl, ruby, that you be never deaf to my desire, my oasis and gourd, whence I aspire to drink deep of the wine of memory. Again, very liquidy. There is an immersive sensuality here. He's looking to put his hand in your hair. Earlier he says, "I'll plunge my head," he referencing her. He calls her his oasis and gourd, which is something that you drink out of, and drink deep of the wine of memory. Yeah, you get the idea. One of his more notorious ones is a carcass, sometimes translated as carrion, where he imagines recalling an incident where, when out for a walk, they come across, he and his lady love, or lady someone, come across a roadkill, it sounds like, essentially. It's a little uncertain exactly if it's human. It might be. But one thing is for certain, is that it's long dead and is in the severely progressed stages of putrefaction, is a fun word to say. And the associations that he brings to it are really grotesque. There's no other word for it. Her legs were spread out like a lecherous whore, sweating out poisonous fumes, who opened in slick, invitational style her stinking and festering womb. Wow! There's a lot there. You can make a lot out of, potential misogyny there. I think there's a fair argument to be made. Her legs were spread. Pronouns in French are going to be a little complicated regardless, but automatically feminizing this thing, evidently he can see that whatever this thing is, it was female of some sort, supposedly, or maybe he's just seeing a open gash of a wound. I don't know. I don't really want to go any further down that path. But there is a distinct sexual desire noted here. Her legs were spread out like a lecherous whore. There is something quite lurid about that in a distinctly sexual way. You can say that lots of different things are, stretched out in what is apparently a big mess of goo in front of him, but he's saying that is her legs stretched out, and he is referencing it immediately to a prostitute. So there's a certain necrophiliac note being plucked here. It dwells on the horror of it and plays with that curiosity again. Like, do you want to look at it? What does it make you think of? Do you want to admit that you're thinking that? It's always pushing that boundary, pushing that moral boundary to try and get the reader into a position where all the rules seem broken away. Because remember, when people are reading this, it's probably not out loud at a polite poetry reading. It's probably quiet, somewhere reserved, somewhere very private, where it's you, the book, and the imagination that the book prompts. This is very intimate stuff. This is very disturbing stuff. And this is stuff that does prompt questions of, well, gee, is that even wrong to want that? I am feeling you're pushing certain buttons and I'm feeling certain ways. Are those feelings all wrong? Are those feelings misapplied? Why are they applied? Why am I offended by this? Why am I not offended by this? All of these questions get asked, and there's Baudelaire behind just pulling the strings and saying, come on, come on, admit it. Everything that you thought was given, everything you thought was true, everything you thought was ideal in humanity, that the romantic dream of the ideal living in human nature, we got to re-examine that, because it leaves out an awful lot. It's a very incomplete picture you're painting. So, think about it some more. Decay, death, maggots swarming on a corpse to give it an illusion of life. This is part of life too. Maggots are alive. If anything, maggots feeding on a corpse is a sign of eternal life. Life after death. Reincarnation? Maybe. That's a polite word for it. But all of this is real. All of this is natural. All of this is part of what Baudelaire thinks about, imagines, lives with. And he wants his poetry to mirror that. He wants his poetry to go to the places that nobody else is willing to go. A poetry that is admittedly artificial, but somehow more real. A poetry that doesn't shy away because, well, that's just not done. He's a very consequential player. He sets up the next 100 years of European poetry, to be quite honest. He is sometimes called the first modernist because of his willingness to push certain boundaries and play with the psychology of the reader. It's very easy to dismiss him for his offensiveness, but it is a very studied offensiveness. He's not just doing it in a crass way to offend. He's doing it to make a point. And even if he wasn't, the point is made. And, well, he gets credit for it. So Baudelaire's life, while being not one I would want, the good and the evil of that life are indisseverable. So, it's good.